Elden Ring is the newest From Software game that was released in late February of this year. I've always been a big fan of From Software games, so I was super excited to get this game. And when I finally got my grimy little hands on it, I proceeded to sink over 100 hours into this game while avoiding all my academic responsibilities.
It's called cocaine.
And honestly, it's probably my favorite game of 2022 so far. Elden Ring offers a brand new open world to explore, horrifying and challenging enemies to face, and best of all, Turtle Pope. But as I explored the vast world of Elden Ring, I stopped and thought to myself, what is this game even about? And when I tried to figure out the game's story, I was only left with a vague understanding of what this game is even about. This is because of From Software's vague method of storytelling, where the story is pretty much pushed into the background and the gameplay takes center stage. Honestly, you could play through the entire game and have absolutely no idea what the story is. So how do you figure out the game's story? Well, you could do that by watching various YouTube videos, by talking to the game's NPCs and reading item descriptions. But even then, you still have to piece everything together on your own to even get an understanding of the game's rich story. And with all that, I'm going to explain to you the story of Elden Ring. This was a mistake. The game's been out for a couple of months now, and there's already a good understanding of what the story is. But with the way this game is structured, there's a lot of things that are still left vague and unclear. So I might get some things wrong. I'm not perfect, okay? I'm making this for a school project. So without further ado, let's jump into it, I guess. Why did I choose this for my project? So Elden Ring takes place in the land known as the Lands Between, and it is ruled over by something known as the Greater Will. Now, the Greater Will is what's known as an outer god, which is a god from space. That's right, we're already dealing with aliens in our fantasy world. So the Greater Will creates an item known as the Elden Ring, a powerful object that is actually a collection of powerful runes that are known as Great Runes. These Great Runes control an aspect of reality in the Lands Between, such as death and order. For example, if the Rune of Death is removed, it would lead to those who live in the Lands Between to become immortal. These Great Runes pretty much dictate the laws of the land, also known as the Golden Order. The Greater Will also creates this giant glowing tree known as the Erd Tree. So the Erd Tree is basically this giant signal tower that transmits the Golden Order onto the inhabitants of the Lands Between. Kind of like how my Aunt Jermaine thinks 5G towers work. So with the Elden Ring's creation, the Greater Will needed somebody to become its vessel. Enter Queen Marika. You see, Marika is known as an Empyrean. Empyreans are unique beings born from a single god with the potential to become gods with the help of an outer god. Being an Empyrean led to Marika getting chosen by the Greater Will to become a vessel for the Elden Ring. One of the first things Marika does with the Elden Ring is that she removes the Rune of Death so she can no longer die, and gives it to her half-brother, who is this giant, cool-ass looking wolf man Malekith, for safekeeping. And with the removal of the Rune of Death, she now became Queen Marika the Eternal. She then met a human warrior named Godfrey, who became her consort and the first Elden Lord. It was at this point Marika would give birth to some demigod children, Godwyn the Firstborn, and the Omen twins Morgott and Mogwyn. The twins were born as cursed omens, beings who were born with massive horns and tails. Because of this, omens were deemed as impure. So what do the loving parents do to their beloved twins? They throw their asses into the capital sewers to fend for themselves. Grade A parenting. So with Queen Marika now ruling the Lands Between, it kicks off this new age known as the Age of the Erd Tree. And you'd think this era would be peaceful, right? No. Marika and Godfrey would wage war against those who would worship other out-of-gods. It was basically like,
You believe in God? Yes. You believe in my God? No.
One of these wars was against the great giants of the north for their worship of the one-eyed fell god. And then you have the Carian royal family because of their worship of the Dark Moon outer god. Now what's interesting about the Carian royal family is despite their smaller army compared to the Golden Orders, they were more than a match against them because of their expertise in sorcery. Now this is when shit gets really confusing, because I need to introduce you to Radagon. You see, the interesting thing about Radagon is that he and Marika are the same person. Radagon is a man with red hair, and Marika is a woman with gold hair. Does that make sense to you? Because I certainly don't think it does. Now, it's unclear whether or not Ratigan has always been a part of America, because at some point in the story, Ratigan splits apart from America to go fight against the Carian royal army. During one of the battles, Ratigan meets Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon, who is the head of the Carian royal family and the Raya Lucaria Academy. Now, upon meeting each other, Ratigan and Rennala immediately fall in love, and they actually get married, ending the war against the Golden Order and the Carian royal family, and Ratigan moves in with Rennala.
The two of them have some demigod children of their own: Starscourge Radon, Ricard, Lord of Blasphemy, and Lunar Princess Ranni.
Now, you'd think this heartwarming tale about love ending wars would end great, right? No, it doesn't.
After Godfrey defeated the giants, Marika stripped him of his golden grace and exiled him and his men from the lands between, becoming what's known as the Tarnished.
And to make matters worse, when Ratigan hears about this, he dumps Rennala and moves back to the capital to marry Marika, which is himself. But before Ratigan left Rennala, he decides to gift her with an egg, which is just so hilarious to me, because imagine divorcing your heartbroken wife and being like,
I'll offer you a nice egg in this trying time.
So Ratigan goes back to the capital, marries himself, themself, I don't fucking know. Then they proceed to have a set of Empyrean twins, Miquella and Melania.
What's interesting about this set of twins is that, like the Omen twins, they were born with some sort of curse inflicted on them. Miquella was cursed to be eternally young, while Melania was cursed with scarlet rot, an uncontrollable disease that rots anything it touches.
So I guess the moral of the story is don't marry yourself or you'll have weird cursed children. And now this brings us to Lunar Princess Ranni, who is probably the most interesting character of the story because she, like Marika, is also an Empyrean.
Hey, wait a minute. How is Ranni an Empyrean if her mother is a human?
Yeah, I thought Empyreans were born of single gods.
It does bring up a good question. How can Ranni be an Empyrean if she's the daughter of Rennala and Ratigan? Well, that leads us back to the egg Ratigan gifted Rennala. You see, the egg actually had a great rune in it, the Great Rune of the Unborn.
And if you read the Great Rune's item description, the Unborn refers to unborn demigods. So the theory is that Ranni was born from this egg, and since it was an egg created by Ratigan, Ranni was technically born from a single god, thus making her an Empyrean. Because Ranni was an Empyrean who wasn't born with a weird affliction like Miquella and Melania, she was chosen by the Greater Will to become the next vessel for the Elden Ring.
Except the big problem is, Ranni doesn't really want to be a vessel. But since the Greater Will is an asshole, it doesn't really care. So with out of options, Ranni begins coming up with a plan to free herself from her Empyrean body and getting rid of the Golden Order entirely. This plan led to an event known as the Night of the Black Knives. Ranni hires a group of assassins known as the Black Knives, and in the cover of night, Ranni steals a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith and imbues death into the Black Knives' knives. And now with their new Ultra Death Knives, the Black Knives then assassinate Marika's first son Godwyn, and at the same time, Ranni is also killed. Now it's still up in the air whether or not Godwyn's death was intended to happen, or if it was just the Black Knives being assholes.
Personally, I think Godwyn's death was planned because of the Cursed Mark of Death. The Cursed Mark of Death is a key item found on Ranni's body, and if you read its item description, it says the following: Cursed Mark carved into the discarded flesh of Ranni the Witch, also known as the half-wheel wound of the centipede. The Cursed Mark was carved at the moment of death of the first demigod, and should have taken the shape of a circle. However, 2 demigods perished at the same time, breaking the curse into 2 half-wheels. Ranni was the first of the demigods whose flesh perished, while the Prince of Death perished in soul alone. Basically what the description is saying is that if the Cursed Mark of Death was carved fully onto Ranni's body, she would cease to exist. But if 2 demigods were to die that night, only half of the Cursed Mark would be carved onto them.
Ranni's soul lived, but her body died. While Godwyn's body lived, his soul died. Ranni placed her soul into a doll, freeing her from her Empyrean body, and Godwyn's body turned into whatever the fuck that is. With her beloved firstborn slain, Marika proceeded to lose her shit, and in a fit of rage and grief, she shattered the Elden Ring.
Ratigan panics and attempts to repair the Elden Ring, but it was pretty much the equivalent of seeing your beloved car get demolished by an 18-wheeler and attempting to repair it by duct taping the wheels to the windshield. So the Greater Will is furious with the Elden Ring being shattered and imprisons Marika and Radagon inside the Erdtree as punishment.
So with the Elden Ring shattered and Queen Marika being imprisoned, this kicked off a violent age known as the Shattering. The Shattering was basically a war between the various demigod children fighting over the great runes of the Elden Ring in hopes of becoming the Elden Lord. Basically a lot happened during the Shattering, so I'm going to go through the events real quick. Some of these events include General Radahn trying to invade the capital until Morgott emerges from the sewers and beats the shit out of him. Ricard looks at the giant Erdtree and was like, man, I want to fucking eat that thing. So Ricard fuses himself with this giant god-devouring serpent, but loses control and basically just sits in his volcanic manor the entire time. Mogwyn emerges from the sewers as well and kidnaps Miquella to be used in his weird-ass blood experiments.
One of the more notable battles during the Shattering was the Battle of Aeonia, fought between Malenia and her Clean Rot soldiers against General Radahn and his Redmane soldiers.
The fight was intense, with only two combatants left standing, Malenia and Radahn. The two fight to a standstill, which leads to Malenia losing control of her Scarlet Rot. The Scarlet Rot blooms, which pretty much nukes this entire area of the world with Scarlet Rot. And despite this, Radahn didn't even die from it. Instead, the Scarlet Rot festered within his body and pretty much rotted his brain from the inside out. He now roamed the empty battlefield, devouring the corpses of his allies and enemies alike. Malenia falls into a coma due to letting go of the Scarlet Rot and is carried back to her home by one of her loyal knights. So yeah, basically it was a massive shit show on all ends. After that whole battle, the remaining demigods decided to take defensive positions, which led to a big standstill. Now we transition from the Shattering to the return of the Tarnished.
Now I mentioned before about Godfrey becoming the first Tarnished, but what really is a Tarnished? Well, basically, the Tarnished are people who lost their grace of the Greater Will and were exiled from the Lands Between. But after the events of the Shattering, the Tarnished are guided back to the Lands Between by a grace once lost to them. Some of these notable Tarnished include Horalu, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask, Fia, the Deathbed Companion, the Lonesome Dun-Eater, yes, that is his real name, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing.
Now this is the point where the game actually begins. The opening cutscene shows the grace of the Greater Will being returned to you. So you make your way back to the Lands Between, immediately get your shit kicked in by actual Spider-Men, and you are thrown down a cavern left for dead. As you lay face down in the cavern, a mysterious woman and her horse find you and wake you up. After you clear the tutorial area and fight the world's hardest boss, you make your way out of the dungeon and into the Lands Between. You meet this nice masked man who tells you get no bitches.
Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless.
After resting at a site of grace, which is basically the game's checkpoints, the mysterious woman introduces herself as Melina.
And she also reminds you that you get no bitches.
But you, I am afraid, are maidenless.
But she offers to become your traveling companion with the condition that you take her to the Erdtree.
She then gives you the horse from earlier, and you are then set loose to explore the game's world. Now we are going to fast forward to the end of the game's story to talk about the endings. Elden Ring has 6 confirmed endings: the Elden Lord ending and its 3 variants, the Age of Stars ending, and the Frenzied Flame ending. The Elden Lord ending is your basic FromSoft ending, in which you repair the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord, prolonging the age of the Erdtree and keeping the status quo from changing. One thing that is interesting about this ending is that the Erdtree doesn't have its original glow, showing that yes, the age of the Erdtree is still alive, but you're only really prolonging the inevitable. The next variant, the Age of Order ending, can be unlocked by completing the Gold Mask side quest. It's pretty much the same as the Elden Lord ending, except the Erdtree's glow has returned, showing that the Golden Order is back to its full strength. The Age of the Duskborn ending unlocks after completing Fia's side quest. In this ending, you mend the rune of the Death Prince to the Elden Ring. The world is swallowed up in a fog and death has returned to its natural order, ridding the residents of the Lands Between from immortality. The Age of Despair ending unlocks after completing the Lonesome Dung-Eater's questline. In it, you mend the rune of the Fell Curse to the Elden Ring. enveloping the world in a vile curse, causing souls to never pass on to the afterlife. We now transition to the Frenzied Flame ending. In it, you basically say screw it and burn literally everything with a powerful flame known as the Frenzied Flame. And finally, we have the Age of Stars ending, which can be unlocked after completing Ronnie's questline. The ending is the full realization of Ronnie's plan. In it, she removes the Greater Will's influence entirely and replaces it with her new order and takes you as her consort. But unlike the Greater Will, Ronnie doesn't want to rule over the lands between. Instead, she takes you and her new order on a journey through the stars, leaving the people of the lands between to figure things out for themselves. This ending is seen as the good ending because it frees the land between from the Greater Will's control. And yep, that's basically the story. Now there is a lot of stuff I left out because if I included it, this video would be hours long. I also want people who haven't played the game to discover things for themselves, letting them piece together the story in their own way, kind of like how the game revolves around your character repairing the shattered pieces of the Elden Ring. So if you haven't played the game yet, definitely try it out. Just remember to level up your vigor.